dear friend, Jim DeMint.
I pledge allegiance to this flag. And if that bothers you, well, that's too bad. But if you got pride and you're proud you do, hey, we could use some more like me.
That guy looks better than I do. Guys, it's great to be with you. Thanks for including me. I'm looking forward to a discussion in a few minutes with Hadley and Rachel Bovard, who I'll introduce. But thank you all for being a part of supporting the Steamboat Institute and for inspiring America to greatness. So I want to start with just a few minutes of framing what we'll talk about in our discussion. And a lot of this is coming from the book that's titled Conservative, Knowing What to Keep, that Rachel Bovard and I have written over the last year or so that'll be out in a few weeks. And we'd love to have had a copy today, but we're about 2 weeks away from it being printed. But usually in situations like this, the speech is what comes between the thank yous. The speaker begins by thanking whoever introduced him. So Ron, thank you very much. And you and Chinza, all you do for the conservative movement, thank you so much. And then after the speech, you know, I'll have to thank the audience for listening to me and not throwing any of that good food at me for what I said. But if a political speech were a sandwich, the thank yous would be the bread. But to understand what it means to be a conservative, you have to make the thank yous the meat. In a good conservative sandwich, the policies, the personalities, the politics are the bread. The substance is the gratitude. Gratitude for all the good around us in our country, in our Constitution, in our economy, in our faith, our communities, our families. Gratitude is a synonym for conservatism. This is the first thing young conservatives, and I appreciate you, some of you young conservatives wearing ties to show support for your elders here today. Conservatism isn't about budgets and tax cuts and entitlement reform. It's not about health care or immigration. It's really not about government at all. Progressivism is about government. Conservatism is about everything else. Conservatism is about the things that make us happy as individuals and as a nation. It's about our faith, our freedom, our republic, our institutions, and our traditions. It's about opportunity, and it's about the covenants that bind us together with all the deep, real, and permanent things that give our lives direction and meaning, the things that hold us together as neighbors and fellow citizens. Conservatives are often dismissed as old-fashioned. It's true, conservatives are usually skeptical about theories and untested new ideas, but we're equally skeptical about old ideas. The things conservatives admire and defend are not simply old. The ideas we like are the ones that have been tested by generations and have proven themselves to make life better for people. Conservatives like to keep or conserve the things that work. Christianity is one of those things that has worked for America. Whether a conservative is a Christian or not, he or she almost certainly has a great deal of respect for Christianity and Judaism, as well as the scriptures and traditions they've given the world. We admire what biblical religion has done for civilization, and also for what it's done to improve the lives of billions and billions of individual believers and converts all over the world. The institution of marriage is something else to be grateful for. It's the foundational building block of civilization, and it's even older than biblical religion. Marriage has been tested by every generation and every human society since the dawn of time, and it's still here. It's still providing meaning and joy to billions of people from all walks of life all around the world, and has proven to be the best environment to raise and nurture children. Now, we all know we've done a lot to diminish and weaken marriage, and we've seen the destructive results all around us. But when societies have the wisdom and perseverance to encourage men and women to commit to each other for a lifetime, Marriage works to create happy lives and stronger communities. When you begin to think about conservatism in these terms, things that make people happy, that help individuals in community, things that stand the test of time, things that really work, especially when compared to their alternatives, you start to paint a picture of the things that conservatives are grateful for and want to keep. Most of the ideas conservatives want to keep are so commonplace, it's hard to imagine life in America without them. But in fact, many of the things that have worked in the past that we're grateful for, things we want to conserve, are constantly under attack and very much in need of our protection. I'll mention three big ones as examples: free enterprise, civil society, and our Constitution. Free enterprise describes a process where people can buy and sell goods and services at prices voluntarily set by the buyers and sellers. This system, also called capitalism or free market economics, has created, for the most part, all the wealth that exists in the world today. In our new book, Rachel and I have included a chart that shows how from the beginning of recorded history, global economic output was basically flat. Most of the world's population were subsistent farmers living on $1 or so a day. But then starting in about 1800, when America was born, the global economy took off, and total wealth in the world has been growing exponentially ever since. We all know the United States is the richest country in the history of the world. But did you ever wonder how it got that way? After all, almost everyone who has come here was dirt poor. America is famously known as a nation of immigrants, but it's really truer to think about America as a nation of poor immigrants. How do we get so rich? Free enterprise. People working their tails off to fill the needs and the lives of their fellow man and reaping the rewards. Think about it. In a capitalist system where all buying and selling is voluntary, the only way to make money is to help someone else with something they need. That's why when you check out at a grocery store, before you walk out, both you and the cashier exchange thank yous, because you've both just done each other a favor. In a free enterprise system, the only way to succeed is to serve. And that's why it works. And yet every generation, even as capitalist economies continue to pull billions more people out of poverty all over the world, socialists rise up and insist the government can do a better job of meeting people's needs. The Democrat Party is having one of those tantrums right now. Capitalism created the miracles of modern medicine. The left wants a government takeover of healthcare. Capitalism created the technologies to use clean-burning natural gas to improve the environment. The left wants a Green New Deal that would ban airplanes and cars and cows. They think politicians and bureaucrats and lobbyists are smarter than ordinary people. I think the dysfunction in Washington, D.C. proves just the opposite. Another proven institution conservatives admire and fight for is America's civil society. Civil society is a general term for the middle layers of society, the space between the individual and the government, where we live our actual lives. From the outside, these associations may seem mundane. Clubs and groups and Bible studies and businesses don't seem as important as the grand ambitions of politicians we see on the news. But remember, in America, the individual comes first. And these associations, from our marriages and families and churches and our neighborhood associations and service clubs to the businesses where we work, they all give meaning and value to our lives. And not just our lives, but to the lives of all the people these organizations serve. What makes civil society so powerful is the personal investment individuals make into all of these missions. The lady who runs your local church soup kitchen is a saint, right? The dad who runs a local Little League or a Boy Scout troop gives hundreds of hours, volunteer hours a year, just to give kids opportunities to develop character and skills. Where would we be without charity races or Habitat for Humanity or Goodwill, collections at church, Steamboat Institute, bake sales, winter coat drives? You know all of these things that are going on. But the same people who want government to take over our buying and selling also want them to take over our giving. They believe government should decide what causes should be supported. And instead of volunteers, they want bureaucrats. They want to turn our community organizations and charities into government programs and agencies. Finally, consider the Constitution. The Constitution was specifically written to protect civil society and the free economy. And that's why it's under attack. Under our Constitution, the federal government is supposed to have few and limited powers to make war, to coin money, to organize the post offices. It was never meant to run the country. The founders knew it wouldn't work, especially for a country that even then was the largest and the most diverse in the whole world. Our Constitution, as Ben Franklin said, provides us a republic if we can keep it. That's not the same as a democracy, where the majority has the power to tell the minority what to do. This morning during the debate on the Electoral College, I wanted to stand up and scream. Folks, our founders did not want a national democracy. They did everything they could to avoid a majority rules nation. We're a republic. They did everything they could to empower the states individually so they would compete with each other and restrain the power of the federal government. In our republic, power is spread out, not only between different branches of government, but between different levels of government. That way, no one person, party, region, or state can dominate everyone else. They didn't want a president that was a majority, elected by a majority telling the whole country what to do. Certainly wouldn't want it a plurality. If the purpose of government is to protect the equal rights of all citizens, and history tells us we want government power to be checked and balanced at every turn, that's what the Constitution has given us, the most successful, stable, and fair political system ever devised. But again, it's the individual decision-making and decentralized power the left dislikes. They don't believe individual consumers can be trusted to buy and invest in the right things. They don't believe organic communities of volunteers can solve human problems. They don't believe that diverse states and different branches of government should have the right to implement policies they disagree with. They want to impose their values on all our decisions, economic, civil, and political. That's the world the left wants. One where they use government power to tell everyone what to do, what to buy, what to talk about and worship, and what to believe. And anyone who disagrees with them can expect to be attacked, deplatformed, or labeled a racist, bigot, or a hater. Not surprisingly, the most powerful elites in our society agree with them because they are confident that they will be the ones doing the dictating, not the ones obeying. Socialism, progressivism, authoritarianism, these are the tools the privileged left wants to use to protect their privilege and remake all of society in their own image. They don't want competition from religions, private charities, and states and local governments, and they sure don't want competition from we the people. And that is what conservatives, especially young conservatives, have to do. Compete. Fight for what works. It's the only hope we have to win and to live in freedom. Think for yourself. Be independent. You'll see for yourself in your own experiences in reading history what we need to keep and how we can continue to improve on those things that have worked in the past. And if you're serious about discovering the truth, you'll find what America really needs is just America. Our diverse people, our amazing culture, our freedom, and all our rich traditions. And you'll find what we need to change is our government that interferes with all the things that make life better for everyone. Thank you. Hey, I'm going to stop right here because we've got a great discussion planned. I'm going to ask Hadley to come back up to help moderate our group. And I want to introduce to you Rachel Bovard. If you have not seen her on Fox and Friends and other shows, she's a prolific writer. She was a senior conservative staffer in the House and the Senate. She was also a senior policy director at Heritage with me, and she, along with a few others, are now the senior folks at the Conservative Partnership. So ladies, come up and let's start the conversation. Come on, Rachel.
Great way to kick us off.
Okay, thank you. Are you here? Okay.
Wherever you would like to sit, Senator.
Oh, I'll tell you, sit in the middle.
I'll sit in the middle. I sat in that chair last time. I'll sit in a different chair. Well, thank you, Senator, for starting us off with a great overview. I want to ask both of you this question, but I'd like to start with Rachel. I am enjoying this book tremendously, Conservative, What to Keep, because I'm used to hearing what it means to be a conservative framed in negative terms. What is it that we're against? And this book is refreshing because it reframes conservatism to be what we are for. So what are we for?
Oh, starting with the easy questions.
Yeah.
I see. What are we for? So it's really interesting. As we were working on this book, we consumed a lot, especially of Russell Kirk and Edmund Burke. And a lot of it is so positive. It's not you can't do this or you can't do that, and if you do these things, society will fall apart. It really is a philosophy of gratitude. It's saying we are so grateful for the traditions that have come up over the last 200 years that we stand on the shoulders of giants and we look ahead. But I think ultimately, if you're going to define conservatism generally, it's a philosophy of gratefulness and it's a philosophy of prudence, right? It's not a philosophy of rigidness. It's not that we say we don't change. It's that we say we think, we ponder, we look at progress, but we also remember. And we think critically about it, and we say, what have our traditions, told us? Has this been tried in the past? Has it worked? And we do things with prudence in that respect. There's a quote by Russell Kirk I think is really apt for this current moment, when the divide right now between the left and the way the right wants to approach things. And he says, men cannot improve a society by burning it down, by setting it on fire. Instead, we must seek out the old virtues and bring them back into the light. And I think that, more than any other quote I found from Russell Kirk, really surmises this current moment that we're in. So I think conservatives, we stand for seeking out the old virtues and bringing them back into the light.
Yes, we do. I'm going to ask the question, I'm going to reframe it in a little more challenging way, and that is to say, when you talk about gratitude as an essential conservative virtue or value, I'm sure there are a lot of Americans who don't identify as conservative, but they would say generally they live their lives with gratitude. Yeah. So what is the line of demarcation? What is it that makes conservatives different?
It's a great question. But first, I need to be grateful for these socks. I want to show y'all. Last event I went to, if you can, it says Trump 2020 here. I didn't know if the group was conservative, a small group of couples, and he brought me the socks, showed them, everybody clapped, so I knew I was in good company, but I promised him I'd wear them to the next event, so you get them. But Hadley, it's a great point. One of the points Rachel and I make in the book is that we're really all conservatives, everybody, because we all want to keep those things that we care about, the things that value to us, the things that work in our own lives. But it seems that a part of the country tends to forget that approach as they go into politics and entertaining all these untested theories and whatever. But I think we can honestly say that to most Americans on a personal level, they're conservatives. They want to keep what they value. And we just need to help people understand. Of course, it's a little harder when you're looking at what's worked over the last couple of hundred years. I find there are more conservatives who are older simply because they have the benefit of time. I mean, they can look at what's worked over their whole lives, their own lives, their children, and sometimes their grandchildren, and a lot of truth becomes self-evident. And that's a term that our founders used. But that's what we want to take to the country is let's look at what works and don't mischaracterize something that worked like our Constitution. You know, some people say, well, it didn't do everything, like Obama said, it didn't tell you everything you need to do. It was not supposed to. But if you understand it in the context, just like this debate about electoral college, it should be done in the context that our founders were trying to avoid a national democracy. And we don't talk about that enough. They did not want a nation where the majority told the minority what to do. And most Americans who want to live in freedom should like that. I mean, sometimes I don't like what other people are doing, but people who are very diverse, it's a point Rachel and I make, can live together in harmony and have a good time as long as they're not trying to force each other to do something.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying about the self-evident truths in life, and I believe in the book you quote Margaret Thatcher saying, the facts of life are conservative. And so that's a summation of that point. But my next question is about facts. Because if we're going to, as conservatives, rely on what works and what's been tested, and we're going to learn the lessons of history and apply them, and we're going to use this sort of systematic review of what to keep and what to not keep, today I feel we're having a crisis over the facts. We have two different sets of facts depending on which network cable news show you turn on. Even during the Electoral College debate, we were disagreeing about history and about arithmetic, and there's serious disagreements, and it's hard to have the policy debate or the philosophical debate when we don't agree on facts. So do you agree with that? Do you think that we have maybe more disagreement today because we live in an information age, and what can be done about convincing people about what to keep if we can't even convince them of the facts?
No, I think it's a good point, and I think context matters so much in these situations. A lot of, I think on the cable news networks, and we were laughing because we go on cable news, but neither of us watch it because it's just so much noise a lot of times. But you miss the context, and so I think there's a thoughtfulness that needs to go into these things that doesn't necessarily go into it anymore, and a lot of it has to do with approach. But I do think, there is definitely a divide that is now glaring in our society, in our politics, and I think you see this a lot on cable news, and it's interesting. So I'm going to say something that I appreciate about this current moment, which if anyone knows me will be a shock because I'm a New Yorker, so I'm a cynic. We just come out of the womb that way. But I do think that one benefit of this current moment is it's really sort of unmasked the left in particular, right? And so when we're having these debates with the left, we used to always say, oh, well, this is a socialist idea, and they would roll their eyes. Well, now, guys, there are socialists running for president on the Democrat ticket. We used to say, abortion is murder, abortion is infanticide. You want to kill babies up until the moment of birth, and they would roll their eyes and tell us we're hyperbolic. The governor of Virginia promotes infanticide and is still in office. Okay? Planned Parenthood recently gave up federal funds because they would refuse to stop talking about abortion and referring for it. Okay? They are no longer a women's health organization. They are a pro-abortion, for-profit giant. We know this now, right? They can't roll their eyes and say, oh, you're exaggerating. We know this now. And so these are now the kind of facts and context that we're dealing with. And I think when we talk about the left and we talk to the left, these are things now that they want to stand for. 44 Senate Democrats went on the record opposing a bill that would have given babies who were born alive after botched abortions the right to life. They're on record for that now. And so this is now, I think, what we're seeing. It's a helpful, clarifying moment that we're in. And I think that's, we all get depressed about the current state of our politics, but at least we know now what we're dealing with. They're very open about it.
Mm-hmm. And Hadley, the other side of that, the left is defining themselves more clearly. Our goal with the book and other things is to define what we want as conservatives at the time where people can see a clearer contrast. And the left, you mentioned facts and truth, and it is very frustrating working with people where it doesn't seem that the facts matter. It's not that you just disagree with the facts, it's just they really don't matter. And part of the book in the end, we try to analyze the motivation of the left, why they're doing it, because there are a lot of good people I know in the Democrat Party who just seem to be going a way that doesn't make any sense. But what I've seen in them is the ends for them justify the means. It justifies changing the facts or ignoring the facts because their ideas are so noble, and they believe that centralizing power is the only way to create fairness and equality. And to them, that gets translated into sameness, same schools, same health care, same Social Security, same Medicare. The more that everything can be the same, and the only way to do that is take away the rights of the states, because we don't want South Carolina doing one thing and California doing something else, because you might see that it works better in South Carolina. So if you can make decisions from Washington, there are no options. But if California wants to run people off, in a few years they're going to have fewer congressional seats, fewer electoral votes, and Texas is going to have more.
Yes, it used to be the case that I would think about public policy issues primarily with the framework that people on both sides of the aisle want the same things. It's just a different way of getting there.
Right.
Maybe people on the right want the private sector to solve a problem, or people on the left want the government to solve a problem. But I think there are some cases where what we want and what we value are just truly different ends. It's not that we disagree on the means, but sometimes we also disagree on the ends. And you mentioned sameness. There's a lot of discussion of diversity in your book. So can you talk about why it is that conservatives value diversity? And I think maybe some people, especially on the left, might be confused to hear us talking about that, because the left, at least the Democrat Party, has really branded itself as inclusive and diverse, not so much on the Republican side of the aisle. So what is it, why is it that why is it that diversity is a conservative value?
Yeah, I think this is a good point. Going back to what you were saying about we actually might want different things. When we talk about equality and we talk about sameness, that's where I think the divide happens, because conservatives want equality of opportunity. We've always wanted that. Democrats increasingly want equality of outcome. Okay, and they're two very, very different things. They get conflated in our dialogue on cable news all the time, but it's a very critical distinction that conservatives need to make. We want everybody to have the equal opportunity to achieve whatever it is they want in life. Democrats just want the outcome to be the same, no matter your race, no matter your religion, no matter what motivates you, no matter what your background is. All of that doesn't matter. You are merely a cog in a wheel, and you must all end up the same. Socialism, in that sense, is the great leveler, right? And it's a reduction to the mean. It's very easy to make everyone be the same at the very lowest level. It's not easy to have everyone be at the same level at the top. But where I think diversity comes into play for conservatives is that equality of opportunity, right? We all have different paths in life, and that should be celebrated. And as long as we all have the equal opportunity to get to those paths, that's what makes this country amazing. That is a bedrock of America, is the fact that we all have the opportunity to strive for whatever it is that we want, to use our gifts and talents in different ways. Has anyone read C.S. Lewis' The Screwtape Letters? Yeah. There's a great section in there where Screwtape says the best way to get at someone's soul is to take away their individuality, to take the scythe and make all of the heads of wheat the same level, right? Then they become the same, they stop striving, their soul matters less. That's a sort of existential look at this question, but I really do think it's an apt metaphor, because that is what socialism, that is what equality of outcome looks like. We're all the same. Your gifts don't matter, your individual talents don't matter, your unique background and perspectives don't matter. That's not conservatism. Conservatism says equality of opportunity to use all of our inherent God-given gifts to make this country what it is, and that is the best country in the world.
Here.
If I can add, you can see why I wanted Rachel up here instead of me. But Russell Kirk, who's considered the father of why we're here today of conservatism, in his book, The Conservative Mind, which was really the ideas we tried to bring forward in our book, he said the kind of the foundation of conservative ideas, one is the belief in a transcendent order, a kind of a fixed order of things. But the second one, which surprised me, and I actually had forgotten it, is to celebrate and protect the diversity of humanity. And allow, as Rachel was saying, allow people to do their own thing, to think their own way. And that's the only way you can keep a country together and at peace and unify. If one of your unifying principles is you can believe this and do this and that, but we come together around a common set of values, and that's why we talk about freedom. Because I can do something different in South Carolina than they might do in New York or California, and that's why they were so insistent on a republic. Is if you allow states to do different things and people to live differently, then people can live in harmony. But as soon as one neighbor tells another one, you've got to do it my way, suddenly you've got a fight on your hands. And that's what they're trying to do in Washington, is to tell the whole country what they have to do.
It's time now for the audience members who have questions to raise your hands, and I'm going to turn some questions over to you so you can ask our distinguished panelists. Got a question right here in front, Jordan?
Hi, I agree with all of your conservative principles, but why do so many conservative congressmen and senators on the home front become liberals when they're in Washington for a period of time?
Tell them about CPI.
Yeah, so we didn't plant this question, but Conservative Partnership, which we started about 2.5 years ago now, is designed exactly to get at this question. And Senator DeMint can tell you over years, there's tons of organizations that spend money to get conservatives to Washington, but there's no one to actually help them when they get there. And so we try to answer that question of why do they go bad when they get there? Why isn't anyone protecting the investment? And so that's what we try to do at CPI. We work a lot with conservative members, House members and senators, and also their staff to keep them on the right path, to give them the support they need, because the swamp is really powerful. And at the end of the day, the swamp's really fun, right? The swamp invites you to cocktail parties. And the swamp, dumps money into your campaign when you vote the way they want you to. But there's no real good conservative network designed to give them that social support. And so that's a lot of what we try to do every day.
Yeah. When we got ready to start the Conservative Partnership, and I just realized as a marketing guy, I'd been a congressman and senator, I'd helped elect a lot of people, but most of them were kind of going bad after they got there. And it wasn't because they were good people, it's just because they were rational, because all the rewards are in the wrong direction. And so Milton Friedman said, we've got to create an environment where even the wrong people will do the right thing. Right now, we've got an environment in Washington where the right people do the wrong thing, because that's where all the benefits are. I talked to Mark Meadows when we started this, and he said, DeMint, you know better than anyone. There's no reward for doing the right thing. No one ever came into my office as a congressman or senator and said, DeMint, we need to cut something. It never happened, I promise you. So no one else is doing that. We're trying to build a whole movement. We try to help all the other groups. We don't compete with anyone. Rachel leads a lot of the staff training, so staff knows how the House and the Senate work. Believe me, that's 90% of the power of a congressman or senator if their staff knows how the place works. So it's been the most rewarding experience of our life, but part of what we need to do is define conservatism. The left is failing. People are clear about it. The Republican Party is not being clear about what the alternatives are. As a movement, we have to define and be united around a set of principles that inspire Americans. I think inspiring Americans to greatness, and we have been great. And I don't like people saying, when someone is saying "Make America Great Again," that we were never great, because explain to me why almost everyone in the world wants to come here and has been. It's because we're very different, and it's because of some of the things that we want to keep as conservatives.
Another question?
Well, we've dumbfounded
We've got,
everyone.
actually, we have a question from this side of the room, and a question that I had asked, and maybe we can use this as a follow-up, but in the book, you refer to a Russell Kirk quote saying, we need a new generation of protectors of permanent things. Yeah. And we have with us a lot of emerging young leaders with the Steamboat Institute. And so I want to hear the gentleman's question, and then if we can also talk maybe as we conclude about how to build bigger citizens and how to foster that new generation of protectors. But first, the audience question.
Hello, my name is Manfred Wendt, and my twin brother is a staff assistant for Congressman Chip Roy. I was on Chip Roy's campaign from the day he announced the day he was sworn in, and I want to thank you for all the hard work CPI does. My twin brother says that inside the Republican Party on Capitol Hill, conservatives are outnumbered 80 to 20% by establishment staffers. And so I wanted to ask you, how do we get more conservative staffers to make sure that good conservative congressmen, senators don't hire the wrong people?
Very good.
It's another great setup, and I'll let Rachel talk.
Well, thank you so much for everything you did for Chip. Chip Roy, one of the heroes of the new conservative class on Capitol Hill. Check him out. So that is a great question. And so I spent 10 years on Capitol Hill in the House and the Senate. And a lot of the conservative staff, because they're just dispositionally different than liberal staff, they'll do their time in Washington and then they'll leave and like go get a real job, right? We never did that. But you know, a lot of liberal staff will stay there forever. And so you do sort of have to, while they are going to be there, you have to give them the tools to be able to succeed. And so much of that is what we try to do at CPI. We train them in parliamentary procedure, which I know sounds really boring, but to Senator DeMint's point, it is how this works. And so we train them on House procedure and Senate procedure, and we give them access to the resources that they need to sort of back up their boss. And Senator DeMint can speak, I think, from the members level to say that that's kind of an important aspect.
Well, it is. I mean, I went to the floor in the Senate particularly and had, you know, some kind of pretty very tense debates with Harry Reid. We were able to corner him on some issues. We were able to stop an amnesty bill. It was only because I had Ed Corrigan, who now runs CPI, sitting next to me, who knew Senate procedures better than the parliamentarian and certainly better than Harry Reid. And you know, he has had to smile and come over and shake my hand after all, because we had a duel. That doesn't happen now, and it doesn't happen in large part because, I mean, you've got Republicans and Democrats who are trying to shut it down. But a large part of it is the members don't have the confidence to come down and deal with these arcane type of rules that they don't understand. But that's what Rachel and her team does. She trains them, she gets them ready to go to battle, what we call weaponize them. But another thing, just to answer your question more specifically, is we're involved now with what we call Project Ready 2020. Everybody in the country is going to be trying to re-elect Trump, or at least everybody on our side, Trump and all the Republicans in the House and Senate. Nobody's getting ready to take care of them when they get there except for us. When they get there, and the administration, Mick Mulvaney has asked us to help with staffing of the next Trump administration, we're going to be ready with a job bank full of vetted conservative staffers so that when new Republican conservatives walk in the House and the Senate, we're going to have people that can staff them and get around them and keep them strong. Because that's the biggest failure of a good conservative new member is getting bad staff who leads them in the wrong direction. So that's what we're going to do, is we're going to build a pool of conservative staffers who know what they're doing, who get together, who support each other, and when they come together they realize that they're not so abnormal. In fact, they are the normal if you think about what works in America.
There's two, just real quick, there's two movies that I use to explain Washington to people. One is The Godfather, but the other is Mean Girls. And if you've ever been a conservative on Capitol Hill or in Washington, you know that nobody wants you to sit at their lunch table. So we're trying to create a cool kids lunch table for conservatives.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Well, I think our panelists really, in talking about the staffing issues, I think you covered my question about the next generation of protectors, but maybe as we close, because we are here at the end of our time, if you can offer this group, the Steamboat Institute Freedom Conference audience, sort of a takeaway, conservative, what to keep, what do we keep?
Well, as I said, it's really America, and part of what we need, the science of conservatism in my mind is really discovering those things that work and learning how to apply them to future challenges. I mean, it's a constant thing because the world is always changing, and the idea that conservatives don't want to change is completely wrong. What we want to do is move forward. In business, we call it best practices. Continuous quality improvement, where you understand what's working, not just for yourself, but your competitors, and you continue to improve it. And that's why the private sector, when it's left on its own, that's why we all have these little cell phones that actually do more than the big rooms full of IBM computers when I was in college. So as conservatives, we need to be serious about what works so that we can have a more inspiring message. And we've got to be willing to compete, as I said. I really think this idea, if it's presented to younger people, it's always going to be hard if they come up through a very liberal college and whatever. And some of these theories sound so good. Let's make everything fair for everybody. So, you know, it sounds very compassionate. But we need to be able to show them it doesn't work, and I think that's pretty easy to do. But I hope all of you will just be part of a larger movement. You're one of those kind of bright lights in the conservative movement, doing your thing. Part of our job at the Conservative Partnership, partner with you and connect you and what you do with the whole movement so that we can get the backs of the Chip Roys and the Jim Jordans, because they've got to feel the love of the whole country, because they're not going to feel it as they're working in the swamp. But I do hope all of you, we left these cards out on the book table. The book didn't get here in time, but you could really help us if you pre-ordered, because we'd love for this to debut on the New York Times best-selling list. So you can pre-order. It's got a link here, and so you can do that for us, and we would greatly appreciate it. But just thanks for being part of it. It just encourages me. I know it encourages Member of Congress. Groups like yours who are really intent on doing those things that inspire greatness for America and trying to continue all those traditions that made us great in the first place.
Thank you. Rachel, do you have any closing thoughts? Okay, we'll leave it at that.
Thank you, everyone.
Please join me in thanking these excellent panelists. I'm going to turn the program back over.
Thank you, Heather. That was great.
Excellent. Thank you.